Welcome to the fourth part of restoring a Yates American J180 thickness planer. In the last episode, we made some repairs to the stator leads. In this episode, we're going to get the motor running. In addition to the table, the motor bell was broken, so I got it cleaned up and chamfered and prepped for brazing repair. Initially, I was going to use a metal band partway around the motor bell to reinforce the brazing repair, but I ended up abandoning that and decided I didn't need it. A good friend of mine did the brazing repair after I preheated the assembly to 500 degrees. He left the metal band and the band clamp in place to hold the broken part until most of the brazing was complete, and then removed the band and the band clamp and finished up the brazing. Back in my shop, I just used a file to smooth out the high spots on the brazing. Other than a few low spots, the brazing turned out really well. The next thing to work on was the motor controller. The motor controller was in good shape and just needed some minor cleanup. However, unlike the motor controller was not a dual voltage unit. If I was going to run the machine on 240 volts, I would need to replace the starter solenoid and the thermal overloads. With a little research, I was able to determine what solenoid I needed and what thermal overloads were needed. Surprisingly, I was able to find the solenoid online and the thermal overloads locally for a total of $65, which is a pretty good deal considering a new controller would probably cost several $100s. And I'm not talking about the cheap junk you're going to get from Amazon. Here are the old solenoid and heaters and then the new ones, and then installed. And now a word from our sponsor. Well, you'll be glad to know the rest of this segment and future segments will include video, but don't expect it to be any better than me narrating through some photos. I'm going to put this cutter head and motor back together. I'm not going to use any fancy stop action video or anything like that. I'm just going to put it back together, and when we come back, we should be ready to test the motor. Okay, I'll go ahead and do a couple of interim shots. So I've got the cutter head and rotor installed. There's the outbound bearing housing. So next we'll be getting the stator core installed and the motor bell. So all those wires need to be fished through that hole right there. It might be worthwhile showing getting these wires fished through here. I think normally this rotor would not be on the shaft when they assembled it at the factory, and so there'd be a lot more room to do all this. But I really don't want to flex these wires any more than I have to. I don't want to have to rewind the motor. And there you go. So this is the motor bell going on now. So one of the tie rods, when the machine fell off the trailer, one of the tie rods got sheared off and it's too short. So I'm using a piece of all thread temporarily until I can make a new tie rod. I don't know why I don't have any video or photos of it, but basically I have the motor controller installed now and wired up, and I'm trying to get the motor to run. Sounds like it's running on just one or two phases. Well, I'm not really sure what's going on with the motor. It seems to run fine once it's up at RPMs, and the RPC seems to be fine, checking out. Well, based on a whim, suggestion from an OWWM member, I switched around the leads on the motor, and the basic idea is there's this wild lead from the RPC that has a little higher voltage and different amperage than the other leads. So I switched the leads around in here just to see if that would make a difference in the startup. And it did. Wow, let's see that again. Well, I'm glad the motor's running now, and thanks for watching. Looking ahead, we've got a lot of refurbishing work to do. We've got to figure out what to do with the table, a lot of rust removal, paint removal, refurbishing bearings, building a mobile base, and basically getting the thing back together. So come back and check and see if we're making any progress every now and then. Thanks.